Hey guys, it's Julia. So as you saw by the title of this video, today's video is all about my favorite warm-toned eyeshadow palettes. So you guys know I really love eyeshadow palettes. That's pretty much the majority of my makeup collection. I've actually gotten a lot of requests to do my favorite warm-toned eyeshadow palettes because it seems that everyone loves warm tones. And I'll be the first to admit that I think warm tones have kind of been overplayed in the beauty industry, especially lately. There's so many different like warm-toned eyeshadow palettes coming out and it's just like, we need some new stuff. That being said though, I do have a lot of favorite warm tone palettes in my collection and I wanted to share my favorites with you guys just to give you guys some good recommendations. I know that the market is pretty oversaturated with different warm tones. So yeah, let's get right into the video and I hope you guys enjoy it. So I kind of classified warm tone palettes into three different ones. So all around like neutral kind of warm tones, then we have really orangey warm tones, and then like kind of pink tones and red tones. So I'm going to start off with the pink tones and red tones, and I have a full basket of palettes right here. We're just going to start off with the most obvious one, and that is, of course, the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. This one is one of my favorites in my collection for good reason. As you can see, I've used this one a lot. It's probably one of my most loved palettes in my collection. And the color scheme, I think, was really revolutionary when Anastasia came out with this. A lot of people were doing more of the orange warm tones and not so much the purples and the pinks, and I think she really just kind of revolutionized the beauty industry when she came out with this Modern Renaissance palette. So I use this very often. This probably has one of the best formulas I've ever tried. The colors are very pigmented and they stay in place, so you can kind of blend them out and you won't really lose a lot of the pigmentation. So I think this is a really great palette. I did use this as a beginner and struggle quite a bit because I didn't really know how to work with such a pigmented formula, but over time as I've kind of honed my skills, I think this has become a lot more easy to work with, and it's probably one of the best formulas I've ever tried. So this is definitely one of my favorite warm tone palettes. I love this so much and I probably reach for it maybe twice a week on average, and that's a lot because I do have like 40 plus eyeshadow palettes. So I really love this one and I definitely recommend this one as one of the best warm tone palettes. Oh, and also I forgot to mention in the intro, but this is obviously a wig. Like, I don't have pink hair, it's a wig. Yeah. My next favorite is actually kind of a more compact version of the Modern Renaissance, and this one is from Marc Jacobs. Marc Jacobs is a very expensive designer brand, so this is actually around the same price as the Modern Renaissance palette. This one actually has fewer colors in it, but it's around the same ballpark as the price of the Modern Renaissance. But still, I do think that the formula in this one is amazing. This one is the Scandalous palette. He also has a bunch of different iconic palettes and different color schemes, and I really like the rest of those. But this one is the first one I bought, and it really caught my eyes because obviously beautiful warm tones. It's actually a pretty neutral palette with the exception of this one like pink like red shade here, but I find that this can create some really nice soft glam looks, and this can also create some beautiful like colorful berry tone looks. Either way, it's a bunch of really nice warm tone neutrals and a gorgeous pop of berry, and I think the formula in here is amazing. Again, kind of like with the Modern Renaissance, if you put down the color and you blend it out, it doesn't really lose the pigmentation, so it retains a lot of that color and you don't have to really build these shades. These are very pigmented, but they blend beautifully, and these are just super soft and gorgeous. I also really like the shimmer shadows in here. I find that these are very nice, soft, and foiled, but you can get them to be super glittery if you want them to. So I've really enjoyed this palette. This one is $49 for 7 shades, so a little bit more expensive than the Anastasia one, but it's a really great quality palette, and I just love the way the packaging looks. It's very sleek and it looks so nice on the vanity. So this is another one of my favorite warm tone palettes. I would 100% recommend this. I think this would be a great buy to actually get during the VIB sale because you will get the extra 20% off. So I guess you would be paying $40 for this palette instead of $50, so that's a better deal. I also can't go through this video without mentioning the one I'm wearing today, one of my favorite palettes in my collection. This is the Colored Raine Queen of Hearts palette. Colored Raine is actually an indie brand, and I really like supporting smaller brands like this one. I believe you can only buy this on coloredraine.com, maybe a couple other retailers, but it's harder to get this because they don't sell it in Ulta or Sephora. But this is probably one of the most beautiful color schemes I've ever seen. Obviously you have some oranges in here as well, but the berries and the purples are absolutely stunning. In addition to that, this is probably one of the best formulas I've ever tried. Colored Raine does not play around with pigmentation. They are absolutely amazing. So the mattes in here just blend so beautifully. Again, they don't lose any of the color. They just retain that beautiful pigmentation when you blend them out on the eyes. These are probably one of the most beautifully pigmented shadows on initial get-go, so you really do not need to build these up in your eyes. They just look so beautiful. And then the shimmers in here are really gorgeous. I especially love these two, Royal Highness and Your Majesty. They are very, very foiled. So yeah, I've really been enjoying this palette. I use this very often. In addition to that, Colored Raine is a Black-owned brand, so really great to support them, and I really love a lot of their products. So next up is a very small, compact little palette. It's also very expensive, but I've really actually been enjoying this one. This is the Natasha Denona Joya palette. This was a limited edition holiday palette. And when I first got this, I will admit, I did not like it very much just because I've tried Natasha's Oh my god. Okay, technical difficulty. Okay, as I said, I was talking about the Joya palette from Natasha Denona, and you just saw the shadow just plunk out of the palette. In the arms of the... I know that that's a problem a couple people have been having, notably like Tati, but this has never happened to me, and that kind of says a lot about the quality of the glue that they use to secure the shadow, so that's a little weird. I do like this palette though a lot. It is pretty expensive, and I will admit I did not like this when I first tried it, just because I've tried Natasha's formula before. I really liked her old formula, and this one was a new one, and it kind of took a little bit of getting used to, but I've really been enjoying the beautiful like berry tones in here. Whenever I want a nice beautiful like raspberry berry shade to put in the crease, I will go for this beautiful matte here. It just blends really well and diffuses. It's not super pigmented. I think it's more of a buildable shadow, so kind of in contrast to some of the stuff I've been showing you guys, this one is a little bit more buildable, but still it's a gorgeous like shock of pink, and I use this a lot. I also really like this middle gold shade here. This is pretty close to the Fenty Beauty highlighter in the shade Trophy Wife. It's really gorgeous on the inner corner or on the face if you want to use it as a highlight, or of course all over the lid. I've also been enjoying all the beautiful like kind of rose golds here. This one that just fell out, and this gorgeous like berry burgundy shimmer shade. I use this one a lot. It's really expensive, and I know that I said it wasn't really worth the money. I do think it's super expensive, and the eyeshadow pen should not be falling out, but it's still a really good palette, and I do recommend this one as well. So I had to mention this one. It's one of my favorite warm tone palettes, and even though maybe the quality of the packaging is dubious, I think it's a really good formula. My next favorite is the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette, and I talk about this a lot on my channel. I really like this one. This one is $65, so really pricey, but I think you're getting a lot of product in here, and the color scheme is amazing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Huda put together a really amazing cohesive color story that really just tells a beautiful tale. I think it's gorgeous. You've got the purples in here, you've got the reds, you've got oranges, you have amazing duochrome shimmer shades, and I think it just really does scream desert dusk to me. So I think Huda did a great job with this palette. The formula is not as creamy as the Modern Renaissance palette. It's a little bit more dry, but it still has a lot of pigmentation and it blends really well. These are probably one of the most blendable shadows I have in my collection, and I really enjoy this palette as well. The shimmers are probably my favorite shimmer shadow formula I've ever tried. I think they're one of the best besides like Pat McGrath, and I think she did a really amazing unique thing with this eyeshadow palette, and I cannot wait to see what she comes out with next. So I've really been enjoying the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette. It's definitely one of my favorite warm tones. Next up in the warm tone kind of like peachy and pink tones, I wanted to talk about the Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes palette. I really enjoyed this palette. Again, the colors look very similar to what's in the Modern Renaissance, but you do have some like nice peachy transition shades, so I find that that is the big difference. I think people were drawing comparisons because of this one shade here called Peach Sangria, which looks a lot like Love Letter or Venetian Red in the Modern Renaissance palette, but I do think there are some distinctions between the two palettes. I actually really like the formula of these eyeshadows. I'm not a huge fan of Too Faced most of the time. I was not a fan of their chocolate bar palettes, but I really do enjoy the mattes in here. These are one of the best formulas. These are nice and pigmented as well, but I find that they just apply very smoothly. They don't have a lot of texture to them. They just glide onto the eyes and blend out like velvet. So I really enjoy the mattes in here. I think they're one of the best formulas, and I just like having an all matte palette to kind of complement whatever I want to use with it. So if I want to do an all matte look, I'll go for this palette. If I want to do like a matte look and then have a different palette with all shimmers in it, I'll go for this palette just because it has a lot of really nice versatile shades. And I like to take this traveling with me because there's a lot of nice neutral shades in here, and then some gorgeous like warm tones as well. So I really enjoyed this palette. If you do want to dupe for this one, because it's $45, I do have a $10 dupe. It is the e.l.f. Matte for Matte 2 palette. I did a video comparing the two on my channel, so I'll link that in the cards. But this one is very similar as well. You have 10 matte shades in here. So again, I love a good all matte palette. And this is probably one of the most beautiful formulas I've ever tried from the drugstore. This formula is top notch. I honestly don't know how they formulated this for $10, but it's still a really, really great formula. They're not as pigmented as the Too Faced one, and honestly you can't really expect anything as good as that, but I think the formula is pretty comparable. They're really nice and pigmented, they blend very well, and I think they're a great complement to any all shimmer palette, or if you just want to do a nice all matte look. So you pretty much have every color in here that you have in here, and I think besides Peach Sangria, which you probably already have in your collection, you pretty much have the palette already. So if you're wanting a good $10 alternative, I would definitely go for the e.l.f. Matte for Matte 2. And besides being a great dupe, it's an amazing standalone palette, so I would 100% recommend both of these palettes. Next, I wanted to shift away from the kind of like pinky tone, like red warm tone palettes and more into the oranges and bright like yellows, kind of fiery colors. So the first one I want to mention is the ColourPop Yes Please palette. I know you're probably thinking this is not the packaging of it. I did actually end up depotting the Yes Please just because the packaging was pissing me off. It got dirty all the time. Here's my Yes Please now that they're depotted. Obviously you have some beautiful like yellows in here, oranges. It's a nice fiery palette. One thing I do think is missing is actually just a true orange. You do have this one, which is more like a coral, but I was wanting something like nice and fiery and like a true orange shade, and they didn't really do that in this palette, so I'm kind of confused. But you do have this amazing yellow in here. It's not the best yellow I've ever tried, but it's hard to get down a nice yellow, and I think this is pretty good, considering that it's super cheap. This is a $16 palette, and you're getting 12 shades in here. So this is an amazing palette. It's definitely comparable in like color scheme to the Natasha Denona Sunset palette, and I've really enjoyed this one so far. So for me, this is more of a summer palette. I will flash a couple pictures of some looks I've done with this palette. I really have enjoyed using this, and I cannot wait to use this once it kind of heats up more in California and turns into summer. Next, I wanted to talk about the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. I have to admit I have not used this in quite a while. Again, this is kind of a summer palette for me. I go for more orange toned warm tones when it's summer. So I haven't really used this since, I want to say like October was when I last used it, which sounds bad, but I don't know. I have a lot of palettes, so I really reach for what's speaking to me at the time, and this just hasn't really spoken to me for a while. That being said, it is one of my favorite warm tone palettes, and I had to mention it in this video. I think the quality of these eyeshadows is a step up from typical Urban Decay eyeshadows. These are really beautiful. The mattes in here are gorgeous. They blend very well, and they're super pigmented. I will say that this is not the most like unique palette in that you can't really create a wide variety of looks with it. So you're really only going to be able to create like 1 or 2 looks, and they're all going to be very warm toned. So you don't have a lot of versatility in here, but I think it is an amazing formula, and if you really like the colors in here, I would recommend this one. I think if you're wanting something a little bit more condensed and with less colors, I would recommend going for the Urban Decay Petite Heat. That just has less shades in here, but it's the same color scheme. So if you like this So if you really like this palette but you don't want to splurge out $54 on the full size, you can go for the Petite Heat, and I think you'll get the same looks. Finally, the last orange warm tone palette I want to mention is, of course, the classic, the Morphe 35O palette. So this is kind of the palette that ignited Morphe's popularity. This is probably one of their most popular palettes to date besides the Jaclyn Hill, and I really enjoy this one. This is kind of the classic Morphe formula. The Jaclyn Hill one has a better formula, but this one is still really good. And I've actually been using this very often because you have a lot of really nice neutrals in here and then some gorgeous like warm tone oranges. So if you really covered up this palette, you do have some nice neutral browns, and this is not the most warm tone palette. But if you just add in those last 3 columns here, you have a really amazing orange color scheme. It has such a variety of shades in here. I actually like to use this when I'm doing like freelance work on somebody or if I'm doing someone else's makeup, but I also like to use this on myself, of course. Favorite shades in here is this one here called, it doesn't actually have a name, but I did name each shadow in here. I just wrote my own little names on there just to kind of use it more often. I figured if I'd named the shadows, I would probably reach for it more often, and it has worked so far. I've actually been reaching for this a lot more because I named the shadows. So little trick there if you want to use your eyeshadow palettes more often. But yeah, this basically has everything in here I would need to create a nice neutral look or a nice warm toned orange look. The only thing that's missing is a matte black, but of course I have a ton of matte black, so I'm not really complaining about that. So I really enjoy this palette. $22.50 I believe. It's a great deal and probably one of the best things. I would recommend if you're just like starting off in makeup and you need something that has a nice variety of colors, you really want to just get started and try some new stuff, I would recommend getting a Morphe palette because you're getting some great quality at a really low price. Next, I want to mention the ColourPop Dream Street palette. This is in collaboration with Kathleen Lights, and ColourPop is one of my favorite brands. They really create amazing, affordable products, and their eyeshadows are one of my favorite formulas. So the Dream Street palette, on first glance, you've got those 2 blues in there, but if you cover those up, it's really a warm tone palette. You have a nice array of like warm tone neutrals, you have bronzes, you have this gorgeous like fiery red. This color is amazing on the eyes. I don't understand why no one talks about that one, but I really enjoyed this palette. I think it's one of the best like all-around warm-toned neutral palettes. I've really enjoyed this palette, and also I enjoy the fact that ColourPop did not raise the price on this collaboration. They easily could have charged like $20 and I still would have bought it, but they kept their price at $16, which is their normal price. So I'm really happy with that, and I think the packaging is gorgeous. This entire palette is amazing quality. Probably the best quality eyeshadows that ColourPop has ever done. So I 100% recommend this one. Definitely pick this one up. So the last palette that I have to mention to you guys is probably my holy grail in terms of like neutral palette in general or just eyeshadows in general, and this has a great array of like warm tone neutrals and basically everything I would ever need to create any eye look. It is the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette, and I've talked about this at length in so many of my videos. You guys know how I feel about this palette, but I love that you have not only some really nice colors in here, you have like purples and blues, but you also have some gorgeous warm tone neutrals. So you have reds, rose golds, just basically every color under the sun that you would ever need. And I take this traveling with me. It is pretty bulky, but it has every color I would ever need. I also really like the formula. Again, this is probably the best formula that Morphe has ever done with their eyeshadows. That's not to say their other eyeshadows are bad. This is just amazing. So I really love this one. It is $38 for 35 shades, so you're getting a lot of product in here, and I pretty much use this almost every day. Yeah, I really enjoyed this palette. Definitely one of the best warm tones in my collection, and yeah, that's the last palette I have to mention. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're entered into my giveaway for the Bad Habit Athena palette. I talked about it in my last video, which was the Bad Habit review video. All you have to do is subscribe to my channel, make sure you're following me on Instagram, and then comment down below what your Instagram handle is so I can check. And yeah, then you'll be entered. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed down below, enter the giveaway, and follow me on Instagram if you want to see some makeup looks like this one. And yeah, if you made it to the very end, I love you. Thank you for watching my channel.